The Neko Light Orchestra, the musical collective, had the idea of doing a marathon. The Neko Light project is really interesting because there are so many musicians on stage, up to 13. So the goal was to recreate the musicians' stage positions to give a sense of depth of field, which is really difficult to do on a stereo system as we can't get the sensation of distance from the source, though there are some ways that all the sound engineers will know. I wanted to work in immersive, but we could go one better and use WFS. I had no idea that it would be possible. For me, it was almost utopian. So we still had to define the number of sound sources that were going to enable us to do real WFS. As those who are interested in this technology will know, you need a certain number of speakers in order to create a credible experience. So we tried using 7 sources. Perhaps more would have been better, but nevertheless, it worked. I was confident from the offset. I even went out and bought the speakers in the week as I wanted to reproduce the experience and prepare the way ahead. Regarding the sound system, I used Karas in 7 clusters of 4 attached to a bridge in front of the stage, as well as Kivas in 7 stacks of 2 stacked on the stage. The Kiva stacks, of course, were on the same axes as the Kara clusters. For the mics and consoles, I used 2 Rio 3224Ds, a patch with 60 ins and a CL5. The appeal of the CL5, of course, being the Dante network, which allows us to interface the SPAT Revolution on the MacBook Pro with a virtual Dante sound card. Using the direct outs, I sent nearly all the sources to the SPAT Revolution, excluding the more complex instruments that require several mics, such as the piano, the harp, or even the strings, on which I always have a DPA and a pickup. So the SPAT Revolution was receiving 50 audio channels, with SPAT's WFS audio engine itself generating 7 more that were attributed to each of the Kara clusters or Kiva stacks. The audio paths of the Dante and the SPAT Revolution passed through the Rio and hit the LA racks in AES. The appeal of the SPAT Revolution is to recreate a dimension. It's capable of generating a space, and in particular, the reverb linked to that space. This is something we can't do in a traditional concert with more standard tools. The concept is compatible with several audio interfaces. It works with Mac's core audio engine, so we can plug that into whatever we like, be it Dante, DigiGrid, or whatever. So we can install a small setup with ease. In about an hour, we can do what we want. I'm not suggesting that we can easily exhaust all of its possibilities, because obviously there are many parameters, but still, after 1 hour, we can create a setup that works. I have to say, I couldn't believe it. Straight away, the sensation is incredible, because we can make the sound sources all but disappear. Obviously, we're used to hearing the sound coming from the speakers, which is still the case, of course. This isn't magic. However, the speakers themselves disappear behind the sound field, that famous synthesized sound field. It's no longer the console doing the mixing or the summation, it's the SPAT. And the SPAT doesn't just do left-right summation, the SPAT does a virtual summation in a virtual space. Perhaps it's that gives so much naturalness to the sources. That's the goal, in fact, to ensure that people are moved by the artist's emotions, and above all, to ensure that instead of having 15 or 20% of the audience in the centre with good seats, you know what it's like. Here, I was walking about earlier, and I'm almost tempted to say that we have 100%. Perhaps I'm exaggerating a little to say that 100% of the audience zone is good, but I really have the impression that we're able to respect the image that we want to portray, no matter where we are, both in terms of depth and breadth. And that's really incredible, because I don't know of anything else that would be capable of doing that on such a large audience zone. So after all these hours of work, what I felt in the Flux studios, or at home even, I also felt here. Better even, inevitably. We don't have the same sound system. It's just incredible. I think that we go beyond that which we can do with stereo, or other known systems. We go way beyond. It's gonna be tough to go back.
here we are. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining in for our live webinar today, November 19th. Indeed, streaming live from Montreal, the Flux Immersive Studio in Montreal, where I've been streaming for the last 3 weeks some of the new upcoming features of our major release. So again, like every week, we'd like to welcome everyone. We've got people from all over the world on this stream. I'm presuming little hello to our friends in LA or on the West Coast that joined in at 9 in the morning. We are here live in Montreal. It's 12 right now, just going on to 12. And obviously, salutations to our friends in Central Europe, in the UK, and even all the way to maybe Asia. Obviously, those guys are late. Very sorry. We have decided to stream once a day, and you guys have to pay the price. And you're probably used to this. But if you are joining from India, from Asia, somewhere, thank you for joining in that late. We're going to be having a great conversation today about features that people have been asking a lot, which is Snapshot, the ability to do Snapshot in our real-time engine. And we're actually going to jump into this. Let me just actually, jump in for a quick second. And we're going to start this. On the line today is actually a bunch of moderators from the Flux Immersive team. They are sitting on the chat and will be answering questions. We will have Q&A periods towards the end. And, maybe in my ears I'll get interrupted for some more questions in the middle. But feel free to ask questions. We're most probably going to keep them as well at the end to kind of share to everyone. But you may get some direct answers live as well as we go through. So our moderators, Nicolas in France is there. Arsène, even Gael, our lead developer, is probably around, on the chat, and other members of the Flux Immersive team. So, without further say, let's get started with our presentation of the day, which will be talking about snapshots and source transformation. And this is, as I was saying, basically us previewing some features of upcoming major release. For the one that don't know me, my name is Hugo, here live in Montreal, as I was saying. I'm part of the Flux Immersive team and leading the Flux Immersive consulting group as well, the various services we're offering to immersive deployments, as well as, being very connected with applications. And as you can see behind me, geeking once in a while with software and testing our integration. So again, thank you for joining in today. The big thing that, to discuss here, before we get started is this major release, for us is a huge, leap in power and performances. And what do I mean by that? Well, some people that have been around have been waiting for that release for a long time. It took a while for us to do it, but it was for good reasons. And those good reasons are, the stability improvement that we wanted to reach with all latest OS. And as you can imagine, we're always chasing, operating systems. You probably have heard about Big Sur on the Mac OS that released. Well, you'll be happy to hear that so far, we like to say we're fully compliant to Big Sur, and I actually got one machine or two here, and we've got some in France at the office as well. So Big Sur support is actually coming with this. So it's a major stability improvement. It is our official Catalina support, although it was working for the longest time. And that brings as well what we call Apple notarization to it. The third point here is something that our lead developer has been working very hard in the last weeks is this parallel processing algorithm. How we, as a real-time engine running on your operating system, are taking the cores, all those cores, and now we're balancing out, just trying to figure out how to get the most out of the computers, and if you are actually, using it with the workstation at the same time, how we can take the most of the the actual cores, the power of the computer. And that is with this new parallel processing algorithm that's part of that new release. New built-in error code as well to actually keep, developing this software and catching as many, bugs and errors that could happen in the code as possible. We actually have added this reporting tool inside it, and last but not least, and the list could go on and on and on, but this is kind of, what's going on with this major release. But at the end, obviously, is packed with loads of feature. And we've been covering those features in the last weeks. We've actually done, a first seminar on November 5th, which was about, the ease of configuration. We've talked about Pro Tools track presets, about Revolution, which is a bunch of scripts for Reaper users to actually ease the integration with SPAT Revolution. And that was November 5th, but this actually covered as well setup wizardry and how to create, setups like this, just clicking here. Then last week, November 9th, that was a very good one in my perspective. This was dealing with speaker arrangements, so creating new arrangements and so on and so forth, and manipulating arrangements. But toward the end of a conversation last week, we've talked about importing, from third-party simulation software, Adamson, D&B, Ease, I'm forgetting one, yes, Nexo, and even from Excel. So importing data, transforming this data, and we actually went all the way to discuss why a speaker arrangement more than, for particular pannings. Basically, the link to, can I use the speaker arrangement with any panning? And the answer is no. So we've covered this last week. And that was a very, informative session, I thought. The moderator on the line will be sharing with you those links. Actually, they are on the YouTube, on the playlist. But, we can probably share those if you're interested to watch them later on. But today is managing your object-based mix with snapshots and source transformation. This is the subject of the day. 2 more sessions coming. Next week, we'll talk about spatial technologies and the new acoustic simulation presets that we've added. And the spatial technologies is wave-fill synthesis. You just saw the video of the story of Johnny Torchy in France on this show with the Nicolite Orchestra. And that was actually us early on testing on real systems in real life, the WFS wave-fill synthesis in SPAT Revolution. So we're going to be previewing and talking about this next week, and actually talking about new panning methods, and briefly talk about presets for reverb. Very simple, but we've added a long list of presets, so you have some starting points there when you're trying to create those ambiances. And we'll wrap up on December 3rd with OSC refactoring. And the OSC refactoring, it's basically us stripping, adding more slots, adding some transformation, adding some more grammar support. And on the subject of grammar is our initiative for ADM OSC, a live production proposal, ADM style, using OSC as the mechanism to interconnect various renderers, various recorders, playbacks, controllers on a system in a live production, from creation or from the live capture all the way to the serialized ADM. More will be discussed on December 3rd. But now let's get back and focus at our session of the day, and is snapshots and source transformation, and we'll dig right in source transformation before we get into snapshot. So source transformation, and for people that watched the session last week, is they're not new with the word transformation. We've talked about how to transform a speaker arrangement, right? Objects, which are speakers, to transform them, and maybe to put them in a circle, or, create a line of. So we've actually kind of started to show these transformation from a speaker management perspective. Today, we're going to be talking about this from a source perspective. So the source in your room, when you're managing those sources, being able to transform them. And by the way, at the OSC session in December 3rd, we'll talk about the same transforms, if you want, or the concept of transform from a OSC message perspective. So kind of 3 ways with the transform. So but what basically the source transformation is the ability in the room view to transform multiple sources. So you can select 2, 3, 4, or all sources and transform them with a transform function, which we'll cover. There's a total of 11 transformation. And the interesting thing is this is not just transforming, and by transforming, I mean really modifying, depending on the transform, the source and their location. It's actually done with an interpolation time. So it will get done in time with whatever interpolation time you've asked. And that's a very interesting thing, in the whole equation. And basically, those actions are fired from this transform menu, which we're going to jump in. But before we jump in demoing this, let's actually talk about those transformation, and then we'll get into the demo so you understand what's going on. So total of 11 transformation, and there they are. The first one is the ability to normalize distance. I've got 5, 10, 18 sources, many sources, and I want to basically put them at the same distance from the listener, all of them with a specific value. The normalized distance is exactly this or that. It will set your distance to all selected objects. Second one, the ability to set elevation, but the set elevation to the lowest element to whatever you want. And what do we mean by this? It's the ability to lower all the sources. If they were elevated, you can actually trim basically down, okay? And we're going to check about this. We're going to look at this up as well. Then we'll start to talk about the offset. So an offset distance, kind of a similar concept, but this time we're not just setting a distance, we're trimming, you know? So you're basically going to be offsetting the distance. Whatever the distance value is, you'll be offsetting everything to a specific value. So we'll be looking at this and demoing this as well. Offset position, same concept. We're in a trim here. We're going to be offsetting the X, the Y, or the Z value position of our sources, okay, in the space. Continuing on this scale, now we're actually still in the trim concept, meaning, you know, relative to the position they have. But here we're going to be talking about scaling. So instead of a value, an actual specific value, we'll have a scale factor, right? A scale factor that say, hey, increase by 2, increase by 3, x3 times 4, right? And so we have this on distance, and we have this on x, y, z as well, on all these axes. Make more sense when I get to demo it. Let's actually just look at the second bunch of transformation. Those are a lot of them, as you can see. Rotation, quite simple. We can rotate multiple sources by a specific degree value, and we're going to be trimming everything. So everything is going to shift, you know, 10 degree, positive, negative. Quite simple. Mirror, yes, the ability to mirror. I have some sources there. You want to make a mirror move on the X, on the Y, on the Z. So the mirror transformation. Linear uniform distribution, we saw it last week, right? WFS system, a collinear system, everything in the front. So a linear uniform distribution. I want all my sources in the front with specific spacing in between. So that's what the linear uniform transform will bring us. Last but not least, this one you're not new to it if you've been using SPAT, is the famous circle. We had the ability, right? You right click on your selected source and say make a circle. So we kept obviously this one. So we basically specify the value and then the circle appears. And last but not least, yes, why not? Sinus, indeed. So you have the ability to define the width, the height, and the Z of those sources and make a little sinus. But best actually to right away jump and show you this stuff. Let me actually just move there, and we could be, and we are good. And that's actually just for the moment, kill this because we don't need it. So here we are with in our SPAT Revolution. I have a very simple system here. If I actually just look at the setup, what do I have? Well, I've got a quantity of sources. As you can see, they are connected as in this WFS wall room, which we are in, and this is what we're going to be doing here. So, and you actually can see signal. That's because something is running in the back, and you can actually appreciate the nebula, which shows the signal distribution. We're going to kill this, you know, for the moment, and let's just zoom in. So this basically, you know, the transform menu is available from either doing a right-click transform, but the Command plus T, or Control T, I guess. Command T brings us that transform selected source. Now, I have only one source selected. Hugo, you're not going to do much with it. You're right, I'm not going to do much. So let's do it to all. And for the ones that have been following the shortcuts, Command plus A selects all my sources. I actually, by the way, can hold the Option key, the Control key, and select which one I want as well. It doesn't need to be all. I can obviously, you know, do the shortcuts to select whatever it is. But for the time being here, we're going to go all. I'm going to start with a reset all and a reset position, just so we all start on the same base. So all my 64 or 40-something sources are actually resetted right now. And let's right-click again. Well, Hugo, use the shortcuts. Yeah, you should use shortcuts. And let's look at this. So back to these 11 particular transforms. And we're actually going to take them one at a time. Why not? You know, we have time. So we want to normalize the distance of everything at the value of, and I'm not going to leave it at 2 meter because it is right now at 2 meter. I'm going to go for actually a 5 meter distance. And why not interpolation time of 5 seconds? So what I basically have happening here by applying this is in 5 seconds, the new position of the 40-something sources is now 5 meters on the system. Making sense? Quite simple to understand, I believe. I just did reset all, and we'll be able to do another transformation. Let's look at the next transformation over to set elevation. Well, set elevation will basically set the elevation to all our sources. Let's do it in 2 seconds. And let's do it at 2 meters. And you just saw it rise. On the right side, you saw it rise to 2 meters. And that is a set distance. Nothing has changed, right? Your azimuth, your position, your distance of the source. Just the elevation on that particular one. Hope it makes sense. Let's just start with a reset. This way it makes more sense. Let's go to the next one, offset distance. Now, offset distance would make more sense if I actually add multiple distances, right? So if I have a distance here for that particular source and a distance there, let's just take those 3. Well, I'm still going to select them all, but I'm basically got different distances. And now by doing an actual offset here of distance, you know, by, let's say, let's ask for 4 meters in 2 seconds. And applying this, you've got basically the relationship. Oop, it got out a bit. The relationship remains the same. It's a trim of whatever I asked. I think it was 4 meters. I already forgot. You see, I've got that type of short memory. I don't even remember what I just called for. Actually, today, right next here is actually my daughter. So, you know, I've been alone in the studio, you know, streaming from, you know, all of you guys, but, you know, I'm from the live world and I need an audience. So I decided today to bring my daughter. She's right there. She's actually wearing some headphones. She's smiling at me. She could maybe even come in the camera. Maybe she won't be too shy, and by the end, there she'd come and say hello. But I have some audience today, so it's great. You know, I've got maybe some reactions, some smiles, some people looking. So it makes it a bit more fun. So let me just grab a little piece of a little sip of water. Because as you can see, Hugo can talk very fast. And you're allowed on the chat to actually write and say, hey, this guy's on fire. Yeah. How many coffee has he had? Yeah, that's possible. I can slow down too. We're not in a hurry at all. Where are we now? Okay, we've resetted everything. Let's actually look at another transformation, which will be offset position. Obviously, it is an offset, so it's a trim, so it would be relative to where the position are. But we can say, you know, to offset position on the Z, for us, Z is left to right, in 2 seconds. And if I apply it, you've got basically, you know, going on the Z. I could have done this on the Y-axis or on the, actually, I guess we have all axes available. Yes. Sorry, not the scale, the offset. Yeah, so you've got it on the 3 axes here that you can do your transformation, right? Your interpolation, which you call it as well. It's a movement. It's a movement. You're not defining the path, but you are, you know, basically, you know, doing a movement. Next, so we've looked at offset. Now, similar here on the distance, and so you have offset and scale, and basically similar. The difference here is we're basically going to be dealing with a factor, right? Again, always makes sense to, you know, maybe have some different positions. And it called a transform, Command T, and we'll go in the scale distance. Now, we're going to just ask for a factor. So if I ask for a factor of 3 in 2 seconds, basically, you know, we're scaling by a factor of 3 times what it was. So if it was at 2 meters, that one is now at 2 times 3. 2 times 3. My daughter should know that. She's 11 years old. 2 fois 3. 6 meters, indeed. And what was the other one? You want more questions like this? And you should be able to speak English too. I shouldn't be able to have to tell you in French. Yes. So you get the concept. So basically, we're scaling here by a factor. Everything is good. Okay, next transformation, where are we at? Oh, well, the scale then, this time on the XYZ. I don't think I need to do it, you know, on this one. Someone is texting me at the same time. Sorry for that. So yeah, so basically, you know, we're scaling on the XYZ. So same concept, right? It's a value. It's a scaling value. Moving on. Rotation. Yeah, so we're going to be asking for rotation here in 3 seconds by 10 degrees. So what's going to happen here? We're going to get in 10 seconds. You see a very slow, a slow move of 10 degree going on at the screen. I don't know if the image is jittery or not. Rest assured, it's snappy and perfectly smooth here. The way that I'm injecting the SPAT Revolution screen to you guys is with NDI technology using OBS. So it's a Windows capture. It's not ideal. Ideally, I would just basically share the complete screen for smoothness. But because, as you can imagine, I've got screens and things all over the place, I'm capturing this window. And that mechanism is a bit, not as smooth as it is. But trust me, actually, you'll see it when I jump to the maybe to the other computer later where, there's huge difference. Just in case you're wondering. Voila. So made sense. Reset all, reset position, command transform. Where are we now? So we looked at scale distance, scale XYZ, rotation. Now the mirror. Well, the mirror, if I do a mirror on the X-axis, nothing is going to happen. Let's just do this. Make more sense. Let's just do a mirror on the X-axis. Voila. No, I did it in the snap way, no interpolation. If you don't put interpolation time, it's just going to snap. So it basically gave me a mirror. Now, why didn't it work before? Well, because I was trying to mirror 0 azimuth. So 0 mirror is 0, right? There's no negative, positive here. And that's what's going on. So you saw the move there. Okay, moving on with actually linear distribution. And that's a linear distribution for all selected source. Let's do it in 2 seconds. We can decide on which axis. If we want a line on the X, a line on the Y. And we've got 2. We don't have a Z here. So on the X, I want a, spacing of 0.1 meter between, actually each sources. I want them all at the 4 meter line. And I want no height. And if I go here, you're going to see what's happening very much. So we've got basically a bunch of sources. If I actually scale this down, you've got basically a bunch of sources here that are all aligned with the 0.10. So just a quick way to do a line. Making sense? I'm sure it does. And then keeping on a transformation, the next one that I remember is the circle. We know the circle. We've dealt with it. Our circle before at a fixed, at a fixed distance. So now we can set the distance. So I want the 4 meters circle happening into, you can actually choose an elevation as well. And you can choose the start point. This is the first object number 1 at 0, or you want to start it at 10 degree or whatever. That's your start point. And the phase is going one side or going the other, right? Positive, negative. How are you starting to spin? So I'm going to start to spin towards clockwise, starting at, well, we can do a little 2 degree just for fun because we can, and we can go apply. And here we are. So we've got, a first element at 2 degree, all other object equi or uniform all around, and we are at a 4 meter from the actual listening reference or the reference point. Voila. Making sense. Let me zoom in. Then, last but not least, do we need to demo the sinus? Yeah, I guess I'll do it for our lead developer that did a beautiful job at doing this. There's a little sinus just for you. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And I could actually define an elevation as well if I wanted to. So yeah. So this pretty much covers this, the source transformation, just, very handy. You can do it. Obviously, I've been doing it on all sources, but as you know, and as you understood, right, with the control key, I can decide, if I want to do it only on these sources, I can obviously do a transform and say, normalize all my distance to 5 meter. And what happened here is, you see, their position, their azimuth, and the elevation did not change, but the distance of all these objects got pushed to 5 meters, which we requested, right? I think so. Good stuff. Making sense? I hope it is making sense. It is making sense for me anyway. And that was our source transformation. I guess we can take some questions. And we have some questions already. Actually, my brother is feeding me questions. Some questions maybe I've already answered by the team. Does this work for binaural moves? So yeah, I guess I can understand. I can answer those questions. Let me just check on the chat. Maybe my brothers on Skype here will be talking to me about specific question. Here I see, does this time work for binaural moves? Yes, totally. I am in a binaural. I'm not. Was I in a binaural room here? On this particular one, I'm not in the binaural room, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's a room, any rooms, you can actually do some transformation. So if you are obviously doing this in binaural, it's going to happen over your ears. And you will be hearing some moves in binaural in a later session when we're going to be wrapping this up with snapshots anyway. So you'll be able to appreciate some movements. But yes, it's a move. It's like taking it manually. It's a transformation. The second one is, why does he add 2 seconds when moving positions? I'm not too sure I understand the question. I mean, you're not obliged to. If you're not obliged to use timing, but if you wanted to actually create a move with some interpolation to have not something that snaps, if there's audio running as you're doing this, you most probably want to do a smooth transformation. So timing, 2 seconds or whatever it is, to smooth out transitions. Really, that's what it is. We got some questions coming in. I wanted to say hello. We've got Mr. Winter, Chris Winter in New Zealand, that's actually joined. Hello, Chris. We've been exchanging on emails lately. I see Christian in Paris. We got our friend Raphael. Raphael, that's been in a beta group, testing and making sure this beautiful release is going to be rock solid with another 100 testers. But Raphael's been collaborating really well. Thank you, Raphael, for joining today. We've got Music Row in Nashville. We've got Andreas in Berlin that joined as well. Andreas, I say hello. Oh, from people from Alabama. Glenn. Glenn from Alabama, say hello. Well, I say hello to you too, guys. Again, it's great. You know, I mean, I'm actually not following the chat. I'm just focusing on the quantity of screens that are in front of me. I think one question actually got put in the chat. Let me just see, Mr. Winter. And you'd use these timing in a show. And you'd use these timings in the show. Well, a good question. I mean, source transformation, you know, is our first step basically to transform source and do smooth movement with interpolation. Now, this is not show control style. I cannot program some multiple transformation in a show control for the moment anyway. I guess, will we want to create those transformation via OSC messages? Maybe. Maybe we go that way. Currently, the answer is no. Currently, those transformations, we don't have an official OSC grammar to support these transformation. And if I'm wrong, trust me, someone is going to ping me to tell me, yes, we already have it. But it's something that could be discussed. So yes, you could use them live in a show, no problem. The point is, it's a manual thing. But if you want to change things, you know, think about it. We're going to be talking about snapshots. You want to make everything circular or everything to whatever, and then you want to create a snapshot. So think about this, right? You've got the sources, and you want your next snapshot, which we'll talk in 2 seconds, to have basically all sources move away, right? You want to get just a distance, boom, happening. Well, guess what? You know, you can do the move. Now, will you use the timing? Not necessarily. You'll use snapshot timings to do this, which is, you know, on the fly, you decide of the timing, so you can trim that timing. So you wouldn't use the timing, but it's the ability for you to transform them. But you could use it. It's just, as I said, not necessarily in the concept of show control. Hope my answer makes sense. I try to make them make sense once in a while. But feel free, if you've got more, if it wasn't clear, you can ask, the team online, and we'll get back to Q&As at the end anyway. Moving on. So let me get back. Oh, yeah, I am on the correct screen. Sorry for that. Now, our snapshot system. Yay, we have snapshots. Yay. Yeah, even my daughter's excited. Yay, we have snapshots. So we have a snapshot system. It's not basically a complete show control inside SPAT, but it is the ability to manage snapshots, to create, to insert before and insert after a new snapshot, to recall a snapshot, to update snapshots, to rename them, to delete them all. And we're actually going to demo starting to show you the delete all function. So this is basically a new menu that we have. There's no user interface at the moment. It's a new menu. But the most interesting thing for me anyway is, yes, the menu, but it's the fact that all of these are completely recallable with OSC messages, so /snapshot or /snap. I'll be showing it to you today with two things. I'll show it to you with the Lemur template. So we have actually built a new template for snapshot management. Very nice to manage these snapshots. Number two, we have a QLab template. Same way, I'll be showing this QLab template in our session today, which will basically show how we can recall those snapshots. And the reason to me that makes a lot of sense is when you're building a show, let's say in QLab, for example, having to, if you want to move one object and have a specific path, that's great. QLab is this 2D, object movement that you can do, and that's very nice. But when you've got multiple things that needs to move, having to make a network queue per single objects or single message makes it very heavy now. It's one way to do it. There's nothing wrong with it. But the fact that we have snapshots now is, instead of having to recall those 20 messages, you just say recall snapshot 20, right? And that's just more simple. If you need to update it, you do your modification, you update that snapshot. People that have been dealing with snapshot get what I'm saying here. So basically, that's what it is. So we have the ability to recall and not recall, do anything with OSC messages from the snapshot system, and up to 60-minute. And that's the special request from my friend Terence. If you're online, Terence, I say hi to you in France, and even other people, to having more, time, because in our beta test, we had limited this to, I think, 5 seconds or 10 seconds. So yeah, 300, someone decided that 60 minutes made a lot of sense. So, and these are the options basically from the menu. You can, and we'll show you this. Cool? Making sense? So here they are, here's a little ID. This is, what our actually menu looks like. So the ability, to create, insert, after, before, as I was saying, recall. Right now in this example, we have one snapshot that's called Go SPAT. Snapshot number one, and here are the messages on the right that you would do, to actually call this, this message in OSC. So, you can call it by the name. You can call it by the name and put a value, a float value with the timing, the interpolation time. So if I actually do this in QLab, well, this snapshot will actually happen over that particular time, okay? Same for the number. So I'm not obliged to use the name. I can recall by numbers as well if I want to. So these are an example of recalls, but the grammar is way more, not complex, but it's more complete than that. You can do creates and updates, and you'll see it when I show the QLab a bit later on. Making sense? I hope it does. Yeah, so here you are talking about QLab. You see a little example here, /snap/recall go SPAT, right? That one, as you can see, has no little timing value at the end, no float for this. So it's going to happen as a snap. But if I add the timing, it would add the timing. So what you see actually is part of my QLab template that you're going to be seeing, that we're going to be releasing as well. So voila. Okay. And I said Lemur template, here it is. So we have actually 4 new templates that are coming, for our users. One of them is actually specific to Snapshot. We've got one for remote control, one for multi-touch, multi-finger on iOS, and there's a 4th one for an actual mixer view. But this one here is our basic, snapshot window. And we're actually going to jump into it quite rapidly. I'm going to be showing you the ease of using this particular tool. So, without further to say, let's actually jump in Snapshots. And for this, I will bring, voila. Okay. So what do we see here on our screen? We're still on the same SPAT session, by the way. Nothing has changed. And what we actually see here, and if I actually go here, what you can see here, I can recall some snapshots. So right now, I've got 4 snapshots. How do I know I've got 4 snapshots? Well, if I go on the snapshot menu on the top, I can obviously see that I've got 4 snapshots. But better than this, if you actually look at our Lemur knows those active snapshot. It basically, asks the information. So we see that we've got, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's actually happening, and 4 and 3 are the same, by the way. And it's happening with an actual time value, and that's my little fader here on the side. I can set it to, a very short time. That was 0.4 seconds. But I can actually scale this all the way to, if my memory is correct, 20 times 20. So that's what, 400 seconds, I guess, that we're supporting on the snapshot, the template. I guess we could do more. But yeah. So if I ask for a 3-second move here, this is going to happen in 3 seconds. You should see this happening. Voila. So snapshots created. Now what I can do actually is right away delete those snapshots. And in theory, if I do remove all, you saw actually in the Lemur that it clear out the memory. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to create those snapshots. I'm going to start with the menu, which is inside SPAT. As I'm going to generate them, you'll see them appear on the Lemur iPad. The Lemur template, and then I'll show it quickly how to use the Lemur, strictly managing this from the Lemur controller. Making sense? Let's attack this. Okay, good. So in our snapshot menu, right, because I've cleared everything, nothing is there. And by the way, the recall time can be set manually here, okay? And this is a recall time for all snapshot. This is kind of your default crossfade time. If you want to have specific recall time per third-party controller, either using the Lemur template, QLab with specific times. We currently don't have that, but we'll see what future brings to this, okay? So I can, with a shortcut as well, I can actually do Option and, well, let's try the shortcuts. Yes, so space bar and Command. Oh, there's a little something weird with this, but let me do it manually there. Yeah, there's maybe a little naming issue there. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe too many things going on my screen. So I've actually created one snapshot. It's called Hugo. And as you can see on the Lemur template, the slot number 1 was filled. Now the name is not updating. We're looking at doing it. Lemur has some limitation. It's not, a totally integrated solution in some ways. But already it knows about the presence of it. And that's the great thing about it. So we've got one snapshot. Now let's get back with our source transformation. I'm going to reset all here. And I'm actually going to call for a transformation. I'm going to ask for a line on the x-axis, the same line as we did earlier. There it is. And now I just did a snap, okay? Let me just zoom in so we can see this a bit more. Yeah, better. And then we're going to do a little create snapshots. And there's something interesting there. I'm not too sure why. And as you can see on my Lemur template, now I've got 2 snapshots, number 1, number 2. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on this. But here, now that we have 2, we can obviously set the recall time. And I'm going to say, yeah, there's something wrong with my window here. And now that we've set the time, we should be able to go to the menu and recall. Yeah. And we had a move that happened in my set time of 2 seconds. Okay, as simple as this. And then I can recall, obviously, my line. And the line is happening like expected. So as simple as this. We've got the ability to create, so fresh create, or we can have insert after or before, okay? So we have a way basically to insert a new one right there. And it's like creating one. If I do this here, Hugo 2, voila. So it should have inserted. Yeah, I did an insert after, so that was not the most intelligent one, but yes, indeed. How many snapshots are possible? And my friend Bjorn is actually, sending me messages direct on Skype. That's the one he's been buzzing in my ears. I don't know. We haven't defined a limitation here. I'll say 999 as a number. Nicolas, you're online. Maybe you can try to create 999 snapshots. No, so I do not know. And maybe there is a limitation, but no one ever told me. Not defined. No limitation. Well, that's it. Nicolas is fast. So no limitation. I guess at one point, the list is going to be, the user interface will become an issue at one point. But yeah, so but from a snapshot perspective, from managing snapshot, yeah, there's no limitation there. Recall, as I said, update. Well, the update is quite simple. Let's say that on all these sources, I did not want it at the same place and I want it there. Now, I could update, and I could update my line. Now, if I've done my update properly, if I recall number 1, I get my circle. I recalled it in the Lemur controller because it's fast. And now my line should be no longer where I was the first time, but at the updated one. So, you know, you recall a snapshot, you modify it, you update it. It's as simple as this. Last but not least, rename. That menu, yeah, same the same thing. I've got a little issue with that menu there, but who knows what it is. It was working fine before. And then delete. You can delete specific ones, right? Choose which one you delete. If the Hugo 201 gone, well, it's gone. It's gone from the iPad as well, the Lemur controller. You saw the slot go. And then we can remove all like I did before. Voila. Making sense? I hope it makes sense. Makes sense for me anyway. Now, you know, as we were actually talking about the Lemur template that we've done, because we spent a lot of time on these Lemur templates that we'll be sharing with the community. I'm actually going to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like. Here it is. So just, you know, so we can talk about it. Now we'll be strictly focusing on the Lemur template itself. Quite simple, really. You've got the create button, and if you create, you see a new number appear, you just created a snapshot, okay? Quite simple. We've got then two modes. Either you're in recall or in update. And if you are in update mode, you can do your move, and then if you go and press number 3, you just updated 3. And you see below the update mode button, 3 was updated. That was the last one that you've touched, that you've done an action to. So snapshot number 3. Now, if we are in recall mode, well, what's going to happen here is I'm going to be recalling, and you guys don't see it, but I see it happening in the back. I see it happening, so you have to trust me on this one, unless you want me to go back on the other screen. Well, we can go back on the other screen, you know, right? So it's happening right there, okay? Good stuff. So the recall mode, 2 modes, updates or recall. Now I was obviously in the recall one. Refresh, just simple button. If you're actually not, for whatever reason, you know, your snapshots in SPAT don't match what's in the Lemur controller, just a quick refresh. We call this a dump, basically dumps all snapshots, as simple. And then we've got 2 last options, which are very interesting because they bring 2 things. One is, do I want to include source selection? What is this, Hugo? Well, this is quite simple. When you create the snapshot, you may have some sources selected, okay? And so we remember the fact that they were selected. So whenever you include this option, that basically it's going to recall the snapshot, but it's actually going to as well recall the selected source. So you'll get the snapshot, the position of the sources, you know, and the selection that was active at this time. Why would this be important? Think about this. If you recall a snapshot and you've got 3 important sources selected that you want to include, what you'll be able to do right after is you can take a remote, you can basically, you're ready to move these sources. It's like I recall something and I then need to do a manual action to it. And if you're actually using our other, well, we're actually showing, you know, an example of this. I'll show you actually quickly the SPAT remote. So we've got this little remote here that we've just developed. And so what could be interesting is now that, you know, basically your sources are selected, we have the way with this remote to basically move all selected. And this is something new that we're finalizing right now, the selection. So you will basically have your hand right away on the selection, okay? On whatever. So your snapshot happens and those 2-3 objects that remain selected, you're ready to move them away and do a move. We like to think this can be very practical anyway. So it's there for you. And if it's not, well, let us know. Voila. And the last but not least, only selected source. And that's kind of a reverse concept in some ways, is it's going to make the action only on your selected source. So if you select sources in SPAT and you say recall snapshot, only these will do whatever the snapshot was them to do. So just 2 little options. Right now they're in red, they're not included, but if I actually put them in green, you know, and if I put both in green, this is going to include my source. Yeah, that one basically makes sense. Not necessarily makes sense, but anyway, 2 options. I think you got that. If there's a question, I'll be more than happy. So, and as we're going to be creating this, actually, the system is going to be adding some rows as we go on. And I don't know what's the limitation there, I guess. Oh, it's not bad. We're at... Do we get to 99? To me, 99 is a good number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 100. Okay, so I've got a grid of 100 snapshot. Now it's starting to get small for my fingers. Well, I've got an iPad Pro, so not too bad. And then, what's important to understand is we've got this fader here. This is the interpolation time. Right now, it's at 4.286. It's on the X5 here, by the way, so I would actually put it on the X1. Yeah, so 4.286 times 1, so it's not basically scaling that value. And if I do a move on the line and I actually go here, it's happening. Voila. Okay, so that was our Lemur template in the equation. Hope this makes sense. Let me actually switch here a little something, and I'm going to switch to my little friend QLab. Just 1 second. It wants to be not happy with me sometime. Voila. Okay. Is it appearing? It's not appearing yet. Huh. Let me just check here. I'm just going to restart the broadcast of my little technology here. Let's try that again, and it's going to work. Indeed. Okay, back to QLab. Sorry for this little boo-boo. Okay, so back to QLab. Here we have a QLab cue card. And actually, if I ask you right now to recall this particular... well, maybe I broke something, you see? Anyway, so I'm gonna jump into the other session for QLab, but I just kind of wanted to preview what we've got going on here. This is our actual QLab template. This is a little kind of example of a page that you can do with some create, some update, some rename. We have a way to snapshot lists as well, which I can actually try. But these are basically, and we'll see those. This is what I was showing you a bit earlier, the actual list of all the possible commands as examples. And this template has various cards. This little example of a card for creating 16. Actually, let's just show it to you like this. It's better, for creating 16 SKUs with specific names, whatever. I mean, these are just example of things that can be done, The recall one, I guess, could be practical, just to have, 16 snapshots or more. You can actually make the grid different, very rapid access, and you obviously would rename it. Yeah. That is our little template, and we're actually going to jump into it, with the other system in 2 seconds. So, yeah, voila for this, our little QLab template. So back to the main cart. Voila. Okay, let me just get back right here. Well, we can actually take a few questions before I jump on the other part of the demonstration, which still involves QLab. We'll kind of dig deeper here, but we can start with some questions, obviously, if we have some. Did Nicolas say no questions? No, Nicolas doesn't say anything. But again, thank you for joining in today. I hope this presentation is making some sense. I mean, it is for us. Snapshot is something that we've been wanting for the longest time. So I'm going to see if some questions pop in. And if no questions pop in, what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to be, and some questions are actually coming in. Yeah, we love that. Romain de Dieu. Could we do the same template on MiraWeb with Max MSP? And Nicolas, you're supposed to give me the answer, but yeah, the answer would be yes. I mean, they're OSC messages. I'm not familiar with MiraWeb personally. Nicolas is, and no. And so I'm just going to say whatever. I'm going to say yes, no. But I'm pretty sure, yes, the OSC table is available in SPAT. Yeah, that was what I was saying earlier. We basically the message, you'll see them actually in 2 seconds. I'm gonna actually kind of show you the specific things about QLab, but I mean the message is the message. Actually, let me adjust here for a quick second. Just gonna be moving my camera. Voila. Okay, so here we are. So you can see on the bottom here, you're actually going to be seeing the messages, here appear on the bottom. So we've got basically a complete grammar. And now we are in QLab. This is the actual template I was telling you about. So we basically have, the ability to list, and the listing is basically in the terminal, on the SPAT terminal, listing all active snapshot. Very practical. We've got messages for create, the snap create or snap create. And then if you don't put a name, it's going to go incremental on the number. If you put a name, it's actually going to be created with an actual name. So we show the two differences there. Same concept for remove. So we have a messaging for remove. So as I was saying earlier, /snapshot or /snap, it's complete OSC grammar. So someone could build, templates for MiraWeb or for any OSC controllers, obviously. I can think about Vezer. I can think about, Ovation now is just adding OSC on emerging technology. So obviously everyone that supports OSC messages. So yeah, good question. The answer is yes. Making sense? Good. Any more questions? No questions. I'm just going to prepare my next bit and pieces here. We have not for now. Well, is it I've covered everything or maybe not? Let me actually just move this little image for you guys a quick second. Voila. And okay, so what I've just did here, actually, I've opened a little sound design example, trying to just talk about, and you should be getting some audio source. I haven't really tested deep, but you kind of get the concept here that, we'll be able, and I'm going to put you in edit mode, you see, to actually, have a start show snapshot. And that's the perfect example of how, a snapshot's practical. Instead of having to recall 20 messages to bring all my source to reset position, I would just recall this. Now, I'm not going to recall it now because if I do so, it's actually going to start the show as well. It's a start show snapshot, recall everything where it's supposed to start. And for that matter of fact, for this exercise, I'm going to move those all the way. What you're going to be listening to is the binaural feed, the room number 1. You see bin 1 unmuted. That's actually what you're going to be hearing. So I'm going to recall this show. It's going to start the show and recall that snapshot, snap number 1. And then we'll start the audio of this little animation. And inside the animation, you'll get some ambiance. This is I'm not a sound designer. This is Hugo playing around, but yeah, it's working. So we've got a 7.1 ambiance, that we're using. There's like a city ambiance. And then you'll hear some kids playing, and then we'll have some little animation, including an actual little bicycle move. So you see that little move here, it's happening, we'll have basically this bicycle move from left to right. So we're actually going to kind of let you appreciate this. We'll have a little dog and, whatever, some little sounds. And we'll actually have some animation of a siren. That will happen as well. So same thing again. But you kind of see now the concept of specific moves to a specific object. This will be source number 12 moving and doing that movement in 35 seconds, on a 2x2 meter scale or, canvas if you want. So we're going to get that started. I'm going to play this a bit and I'm going to stop it. We'll see if it reacts properly anyway. And let's start that. Let me just mute my microphone here. I'm going to stop this because I can obviously play it for a while, but I can fire just some little sound around, right? If I just go for that siren move, you'll get what's going on. All right, so just firing a movement. So yay, that's it. So voila, so you obviously how you combine all this into, an actual complete show with specific movements on the object, snapshots that will be your start point, and maybe some other scenes. Now, I just did the start point as an example of recalling that snapshot, but the same would apply, obviously, if you had multiple point, right? It's the scene, it's the beginning of the scene, it's a snapshot, and then specific objects are moving in time, either with some wait time. There's obviously different strategies in QLab. I used a very simple one there. So voila, I think I've actually covered all what I had for you guys today. I think so anyway. I don't know if there's some more questions that have popped up. I like to think that it's quite straightforward. Let's just wrap up this on a little Q&A. If there are any questions anyway, we can, tackle those. Oh, no question for now. Well, it's now or never. Maybe some will come. Well, it's already 1 o'clock. I don't know. I'll give you guys a little time if you've got some question. I like to think, obviously that, it's fairly straightforward what's going on as far as Snapshot goes. We're going to be wrapping up on this right after this Q&A. I'm going to be playing again what we've played at the beginning. For the people that missed the beginning, we had a little 5-minute story on the WFS. So if someone actually missed it, I'm going to be playing this at the end. And we're actually going to be talking about the upcoming sessions as well. No questions, just excited to start playing with the new release as soon as it drops. Yeah, we're all very excited. I'm not going to make any promises, but it's imminent. It's imminent. It's question of days. I'm not going to say weeks. We're in the final stretch. We're finalizing those actual templates this morning. The one that you saw, well, you saw the remote one quickly, briefly, but we're just about to update, all of those. So we're ready to push, template for consoles, templates for, we already had a bunch of workstation, digital audio workstation templates, but now we're adding more Lemur templates, more QLab templates. Digital console template, thanks to Raphael that's been helping on this, and we've got obviously Avid S6L template and so on and so forth, really to get people going, more rapidly on systems. Do you feel that a lab has more options than Lemur for creating moves or in a DAW? QLab, is that I guess QLab, I saw lab, so I'm assuming the answer is, do I feel that QLab has more options than Lemur? Well, yes, I mean, Lemur can be scripted. The great thing about Lemur, is that it can be scripted. And they were doing a lot of things because we've, I was about to say a bad word here, but, we've went deep into scripting it and making things, communicate, but it has the limitations. It totally has limitations. I would say it's more complex for programming if you want to do something from scratch specific, where obviously QLab, it's a show control software. It's obviously, unfortunately, Mac OS only, but it is, been reliable. It plays your audio track. I mean, to me, it just makes way more sense to actually use QLab. Now, digital audio workstation can be good too, because we have the ability to record on the timeline all these parameters. The problem is, it's a timeline, and not all shows are timelines. And, or there's multiple timelines in the show, and the timeline starts when the scene starts. But then, the scene will start only when the actors are ready or when a specific condition is waiting for something to happen before. So, yeah, Lemur, it's a sidecar. We've built the Lemur, and you can put more than one Lemur. Myself, I would see myself having the remote and the snapshot as my two sidecars attached to the console. Normally, my iPad right there is attached on the console, on the console, and I can recall a snapshot. Maybe I have the remote to move a source, and then obviously I've got the complete control surface. But yeah, the ability to use 1 or 2 Lemur template is great, but it is what it is, right? It's predefined. It's it's a control surface. It's a grab, a rapid grab. But from an actual timing and show management, yeah, QLab is the way. And then if everything is programmed and premeditated, well, you just stick everything on the timeline and the show is on a click, track kind of deal, and then you can use the digital audio workstation. So I hope this answered this question. I hope it did. Let's just kind of wrap up slowly. If other questions come in, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But we're going to be looking towards the end here. So this wraps up our session number 3, November 19th, on the snapshots and source transformation. Next week, same time, stay tuned. We're going to be talking about spatial technologies. We'll talk about wave field synthesis and how to use it in SPAT. We'll talk about layer-based amplitude panning. So instead of doing triangulation, we have elevation. Instead of doing triangulation, you actually may be cross-fading, maybe for lack of a better word, cross-fading between a 2D, angular panning to another 2D angular panning on both layers. So it's a layer approach instead of the triangulation typically happening in angular methods. And we'll talk about these reverb presets as well, these new presets that are available for the people. And last but not least will be December 3rd. Our friends are going to be putting those session links online. They're available on the YouTube playlist. They're already programmed, I think so anyway. And then the 3rd, as I said earlier, OSC refactoring, complete things that we've done on the OSC. There's a long list. That's going to be a great session too for people that like to geek with OSC messages anyway. But the ADM OSC initiative and proposal is going to be discussed on that December 3rd session. So if I don't see any more questions, this is a last call of last call. I'm going to let everyone go. It's been an hour precisely. I normally always go overtime, but I knew today I could be a good boy and not go too much overtime. And I'm going to let you go on the actual little WFS presentation we did at the end. It's a little video that we just finished of testing the WFS with Johnny Torchy in France and the Nicolite Orchestra. So hope everyone enjoyed the session today. It was a pleasure to be live with you, and we'll be ready ready for next week. If you've got any questions, feel free, obviously, to ask them. The chat will remain open for quick seconds. And then if it's more technical, like support-specific, support@flux.audio. We obviously have Vincent and Arsène and the team there. And even myself, I get involved in those once in a while, to actually support any problems you may be having on systems. So without further to say, I'm going to let you guys go with this little video presentation, and then we're going to see each other next week. I hope so anyway. You guys take care. Thank you again. That was Hugo streaming from the Montreal studio, Flux Immersive. Take care.
The Necolite Orchestra, the musical collective, had the idea of doing a marathon. The Necolite project is really interesting because there are so many musicians on stage, up to 13. So the goal was to recreate the musicians' stage positions to give a sense of depth of field, which is really difficult to do on a stereo system as we can't get the sensation of distance from the source, though there are some ways that all the sound engineers will know. I wanted to work in immersive, but we could go one better and use WFS. I had no idea that it would be possible. For me, it was almost utopian. So we still had to define the number of sound sources that were going to enable us to do real WFS. As those who are interested in this technology will know, you need a certain number of speakers in order to create a credible experience. So we tried using 7 sources. Perhaps more would have been better, but nevertheless, it worked. I was confident from the offset. I even went out and bought the speakers in the week as I wanted to reproduce the experience and prepare the way ahead. Regarding the sound system, I used Karas in 7 clusters of 4 attached to a bridge in front of the stage, as well as Kivas in 7 stacks of 2 stacked on the stage. The Kiva stacks, of course, were on the same axes as the Kara clusters. For the mics and consoles, I used 2 Rio 3224Ds, a patch with 60 ins and a CL5. The appeal of the CL5, of course, being the Dante network, which allows us to interface the SPAT Revolution on the MacBook Pro with a virtual Dante sound card. Using the direct outs, I sent nearly all the sources to the SPAT Revolution, excluding the more complex instruments that require several mics, such as the piano, the harp, or even the strings, on which I always have a DPA and a pickup. So the SPAT Revolution was receiving 50 audio channels, with SPAT's WFS audio engine itself generating 7 more that were attributed to each of the Cara clusters or Kiva stacks. The audio paths of the Dante and the SPAT Revolution passed through the Rio and hit the LA racks in AES. The appeal of the SPAT Revolution is to recreate a dimension. It's capable of generating a space, and in particular, the reverb linked to that space. This is something we can't do in a traditional concert with more standard tools. The concept is compatible with several audio interfaces. It works with Mac's core audio engine, so we can plug that into whatever we like, be it Dante, DigiGrid, or whatever. So we can install a small setup with ease. In about an hour, we can do what we want. I'm not suggesting that we can easily exhaust all of its possibilities, because obviously there are many parameters, but still, after 1 hour, we can create a setup that works. I have to say, I couldn't believe it. Straight away, the sensation is incredible, because we can make the sound sources all but disappear. Obviously, we're used to hearing the sound coming from the speakers, which is still the case, of course. This isn't magic. However, the speakers themselves disappear behind the sound field, that famous synthesized sound field. It's no longer the console doing the mixing or the summation, it's the SPAT. And the SPAT doesn't just do left-right summation, the SPAT does a virtual summation in a virtual space. Perhaps it's that gives so much naturalness to the sources. That's the goal, in fact, to ensure that people are moved by the artist's emotions, and above all, to ensure that instead of having 15 or 20% of the audience in the centre with good seats, you know what it's like. Here, I was walking about earlier, and I'm almost tempted to say that we have 100%. Perhaps I'm exaggerating a little to say that 100% of the audience zone is good, but I really have the impression that we're able to respect the image that we want to portray, no matter where we are, both in terms of depth and breadth. And that's really incredible, because I don't know of anything else that would be capable of doing that on such a large audience zone. So after all these hours of work, what I felt in the Flux studios, or at home even, I also felt here. Better even, inevitably. We don't have the same sound system. It's just incredible. I think that we go beyond that which we can do with stereo, or other known systems. We go way beyond. It's gonna be tough to go back.